Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to be here with you all today. I haven't ever done one of these at ONA, and so this is a new experience for me as well. For many of you that may have joined the Cattlemen's Institute, this is going to be a very similar presentation. I thought it was still fitting. I updated a few things in it and went through some of the stuff to make it a little more current and a little more user friendly as we go through today. I'm gonna go through and I will get to any questions we might have towards the end. Much of this is pretty straightforward stuff. I've just tried to think it through from outside the box and talk just a little bit about culling considerations. When we look at normal culling in a herd, if you've got a 100 head example here, you know, a lot of guys will cull cows for them being old. They'll cull cows because their mouth is broken or they don't have teeth anymore. That may represent about 5 of those head. Open cows will generally represent the largest percentage of females in our culling schematic here. And I just threw in a number between 5 and 10. It's probably closer to 10 for the majority of us out there, but we just threw that out there. And it's possible that they were both old and open, so they would fall in more than one of these categories. Udder issues, you'll have 1 or 2 cows a year with an udder issue to where it inhibits that calf from nursing, and we'll talk about that a little more. A sorry calf or a lost calf, we'll talk about the logistics of culling based upon calf performance. A cow that's crippled, has a foot issue, a leg issue, or an eye problem could hit this list. And then a disposition issue, and this is getting to be more and more of an issue with the average age of our producers in the United States being older, and then certainly disease. You know, a cow that's very thin, unthrifty, or had extreme calving problems, all of those things amount to somewhere around 15 to 20% of our cows are culled per year. Again, certainly a cow could represent multiple things. If she's old, she's more likely to have eye or feet or leg issues, potentially a sorry calf. You know, all of those things fit together. Now, if you look at national data on the reasons why cows are culled, and we have the same stuff up there, old is about 1/3 of them, open is about 1/3 of them, and then we drop off considerably in terms of percentages, down below 5% for disposition and sorry calf, which would be next, udder issues, feet and leg issues, eye issues, disease issues. But one I thought was most unique was needing money. I didn't address that one earlier, but a lot of cows would be culled because I need to make a payment on a truck or tractor. We need cash flow to buy feed. So based upon the way our beef industry looks, a lot of our producers operate these cows almost as a savings account that they can draw out of at times in which they may need extra money. If you look at cow age, and I have been asked this question by multiple people, there's no cookbook for this. A lot of people say, well, I like to cull cows. Any cow that's open over the age of 7, she goes. Any cow over the age of 10 goes regardless of her pregnancy status. Any cow over the age of 14 goes. To me, this is, you know, those generic across the board recommendations are dangerous. I think it should be done on a case by case basis, a ranch by ranch basis. And I would propose a cull and probation designation. Now, obviously, as cows get older, their chance of being culled gets greater. And there's fewer of them in the herd, and as we'll see here in just a minute. But if we'll put them into a cull category and a probation category, I think it simplifies management to a certain degree. If you look at cow age distribution in herd, it's very clear that a big percentage of your herd, probably 2/3 of your herd, are these young animals, less than 7 or 8 years of age. And a very, very tiny percentage of your herd is up here in the 12, 13-year-old range. Now, this is North Dakota data. where cows would typically be culled by the time they're 10 or 11. You could stretch this out to 14, 15, 16, even 17 here in Florida. But again, as a percentage of the herd, these really old cows represent a very small percent. In Florida and the Gulf Coast, we've known forever that our crossbred cows down here, particularly Brahman cross cows, will be productive to a much later age than other parts of the country. And so I think it's very prudent to put it on a case-by-case basis. I've seen cows that were 6 years old that had no teeth, and I've seen cows that were 21 years old that had a full mouth. So a case-by-case basis, I think, is critical when we evaluate these cows every fall to whether or not she's going to stay or whether or not she's going to be a cull. In terms of longevity in the cow herd, if we were talking about the pork industry or even the purebred beef cattle industry, they would talk about shortening that generation interval, turning it over. Who's the next crop coming? What genes do they have? I think that certainly has a lot of merit in the purebred industry and maybe some of the other industries. But in commercial cow-calf, I think it's way overrated. The break-even age on a cow for most producers is somewhere between the age of 6 to 7 years old for that cow. And what that means is at that point, she's paid for. From that point on, provided she doesn't have any major breakdowns on you, she will be productive. You know, if she'll stay till 15 years old, she's making me money. Heifers are very expensive and heifers are much less productive. Now, at some point in time, you have to make the decision, and we'll talk about that more again, that maybe that old cow isn't even going to be as productive as a heifer. So we'll bring that up again in just a little bit. But I think longevity is really important in the commercial cow-calf industry. It's critical. So I want to do everything I can for her not to get into the cull category. And I really don't even want her to go on probation if you look at it that way. If you look at what drives cow longevity, it's very breed related. Certainly there are longevity attributes related to crossbred cows versus purebred cows. Angus Hereford cows will live longer than Angus or Hereford cows and be productive. I'm not really just worried about if she'll live. I want her to have a calf every year. But when you add Brahman to that mix and you have Brahman Angus or Brahman Hereford cows, it extends that even more, considerably more. So the longevity of those cows is very good. One of the problems with those older cows and that you need to keep in mind, and you really need to watch them, is as cows get older, their productivity goes down. So cows in this particular study, there weren't many cows, but those that were 9, 10, and 11 started to decline in productivity overall. They were not, didn't raise as good a calf. In fact, they were very similar. This 11-year-old cow was very similar to these 2-year-old cows. So you have to make a decision. You know, if I only had 1 or 2 of them, it wouldn't be much of a decision to make. But some of us in Florida would have a large group of cows that were 12, 13, 14 years old. And I think you need to watch those cows very closely from a probation standpoint. There is work to say that when they're Brahman crossed cows, that they are productive to a greater age. Cows between 3 and 12 years of age wean 565 pounds in this Texas study. Cows between 12 and 17 years wean 569 pounds. So those Brahman cross cows tend to stay very productive for a much longer time period. They're very desirable from that standpoint. And I'm not really worried about turning her generation over and replacing her with this year's model, as long as she doesn't have any faults. Now, what about open cows? Should you cull her for being open? And there are different schools of thought on this. Again, I think it's a case-by-case basis. It might not be her fault. She may have had a late calf. We may have a bull fertility issue. That's very common, especially in these single sire herds. She may have been in poor body condition as a result of bad winter. It may be your fault from a supplement standpoint, or we didn't make good hay. She may have a heavy parasite load. Keep in mind that reproduction as a whole, many of the reproductive traits are not really controlled as much by genes as they are the environment. And by the environment, I mostly mean how much you're feeding her, how fat she is. So I will generally give a cow one free skip and say it was my fault, but then she goes on probation. She can take that skip as a going from a 2 to a 3-year-old if she misses there, which is very common, or she can take it from a 10 to 11-year-old. The first time it's my fault, the second time it's her fault. And I think many of you out there are operating on a culling principle like that. The one thing you need to be cognizant of is these cows that are look like the one in the picture here. And you're questioning, this might be her year to get pregnant. Well, if it wasn't last year and the year before and the 6 previous years, it's not going to be this year. Keep a watch on these cows. Some good records. It doesn't take records to find a cow like this, but those really fat, dry cows are only that way because they haven't been working. That cow needed to go 4 or 5 years ago before she ever got in a condition like that. Should you cull a cow for raising a sorry calf? This is one that's often debated. Again, it might not be her fault. That calf might have gotten sick. He might have gotten a little navel ill. He might have had a poor sire. Might have been neighbor's bull jumped in. Calf might have been late born. And really wasn't his fault. Maybe the cow didn't cycle, didn't get bred because a lot of cows were in heat that day and the bull didn't catch her. Calf had difficult birth and a very slow start. That can be very common. You don't have to weigh your calves to know this. As a simple way to look at this, just take those cows, and when you've got them up for market and branding, any of those calves that you see are kind of small or sorry, leave them in the pen overnight. If they have a mama, she will be there tomorrow morning. Put her in the pen, identify her somehow, put a big old yellow ear tag in her for caution, and put her on probation. Give her an earmark. So she's not really doing a great job raising a calf, but at least she did get pregnant. So she may not need to go right away, but if she does it again, first time again, she's on probation. Second time, it's on her. This is some recent data that came out that was very interesting to me. They scored cows according to their udder and looked at, how to cull this cow. She's got a bad udder. And there are a lot of differences in udder. It's very highly heritable, at least moderately heritable, and in some cases highly heritable. Cows with a good udder weaned the same size calf as cows with a bad udder. And this was a pretty sizable study with about 2,000 cows on it. And they quantified the udders as, if she had 3 really good teats, but 1 really bad one, she got a bad udder score. So all she had to have was 1 bad teat, and it made it acceptable. Now, if she's got 4 really bad teats, that's something else. The data clearly says, though, that if the calf can't get around to 1 of them or 2 of them, she'll probably go on and raise an acceptable level of calf. But if she's got 4 bad ones and that calf can't nurse on his own, it was time for her to go. And we don't want to leave her. You can take those cows with less desirable udders, unbalanced udders, large teats. To me, those are candidates to go on probation when you observe that at the first time. And they probably ought to be in what I'm going to call my terminal herd here in a minute. We'll talk about. Now, the decision to cull a cow is not always identical to the decision on when to market her. You may have decided that this cow's old and she needs to go. She's open, she needs to go. She'll go on your short list to cull, but the market may not be right to sell her. So you have options there. I think all too often people cull a cow and they say, all right, let's take her to town right now, immediately. Well, in the fall, when many of us are preg checking cows, is typically the low time of the year for cull cow prices. So, some of this will depend a little on your reason for culling. If that reason is just she's an open cow, you can keep her till the spring and you can sell her in a better market. You know, if this is a cow that didn't have an eye problem, she didn't have a foot problem, she didn't have a disposition problem, you can move her to the spring and that market will go up generally 10 cents. Sometimes it's higher than that. You can feed her to improve condition. And so maybe she's a little thin, she's open, she raised a great calf, but now it's time for her to, it's time for us to move her down the road. That doesn't mean she has to go today. We can put her on some pretty low quality stuff and put weight on her pretty inexpensively. And I'm going to show you that in a minute. You can move her to a terminal herd or group. You can put this group right up front in your front pasture where everybody drives by and put a sign that says cows for sale. That can be a group that, you know, they're for sale back to the country. They can be for sale to the packer, depending on when the market gets right. Cull cows don't always have to go to slaughter. I see a lot of people that will capitalize on this and take a cull cow in the fall, kick her into a pasture with some bulls that really aren't doing anything. Maybe these are spare bulls or older bulls that I'm just keeping in case of emergency. And then they'll sell those bred cows in the spring in a higher market with a lot higher value. There's probably $200 a head from a open cull in the fall to a bred cow in the spring, at least that much. In many cases, sometimes even more than that. Now, when you want to look at marketing cull cows, there are some ways you can sell them. You can go straight to the packer. When you go to the packer with a load of cows or a gooseneck load, you will stand the condemnations, trim loss, bruise loss, downers. That's on you. And so an animal is condemned, you won't get any money for. A downer, you won't get any money for. Those animals all have to be euthanized and disposed of. You are paid on carcass value. So if you've done a good job and those cows are in good condition, there's some extra money that can be recouped there by selling them that way. But keep in mind, there are very different standards at different plants. The USDA grading system is not widely used across all kinds of cull cow plants. And so what we do in fed beef, where we talk about choice and prime and select, that's not used. The cull cow grades are not routinely used. Instead, they have house grades. So not all plants are created equal from that standpoint, is what I'm trying to tell you. And so you need to be aware of where your cows fit and how they're going to grade going into that plant. For most producers, the livestock market is probably the best option. You're going to have to pay some commission associated with that. But as long as that cow is in good shape, she's healthy, she doesn't present any risk of the chance to go down or anything like that, then this is probably going to be our best bet for a lot of producers that are out there in terms of the best way to sell those cull cows. And we talked about this earlier. Cow prices can be very seasonal. If you look at the percent change in value from November to January, it's about a 10% change in value. But from November to February, it's 16%. November to March, it's over 20%. And even on up into April and May, it can get almost 25. But the big gain is to get them out there about March. When grass starts to come in for a lot of people, there's a huge change in value. The packers are through all those cattle that they have warehoused through the winter, and they're moving into a new season. And now you have people competing for your cattle that want to take them back to the country. So she might have been an open cow that failed to reproduce for you twice, but someone else may see a lot of value in her and say, you know what, in my place, she'll work perfectly. And so she has a lot more value when we can get her to that spring market. Keep in mind, there are tax implications to moving her to next year. If you hold cows over, that may affect your tax base. You need to talk with your accountant about that. One of the things I think that will simplify management is to have a second calving season. Many people in South Florida may calve in the fall, wean those calves in the late summer, and then preg check cows in the fall. You can take those cows, put them right with a bull, have a separate calving season. You know, if we've determined she's open, she gets an ear notch. When we wean her calf this year, she gets an ear notch, goes right in with a Charolais bull, and she's in her own calving season. Okay. That really works best up here in the North Florida area where we can calve them in the spring and roll them to a fall herd. But you can do the same thing in South Florida. And that once that cow goes into that probation herd, we'll call it, she gets a terminal sire. It doesn't have to be a Charolais bull. It could be an Angus bull. It could be a Simmental bull. It could be a lot of different ways, but we're no longer keeping any heifers out of her. She's stubbed her toe and she's going into a different calving season. That's a set of cows managed differently. They're probably not going to get the best of the best. They're on probation. They're going to get mineral, whatever we're going to do from a supplementation standpoint, but they're not going to be the ones that are going to get the best care and treatment. She's already broke the law one time, and she's going to have to be making it on her own. When Dr. Herschel was here, he did a neat little demo on flipping cows where we'd gone to the sale barn and buying cows, and I just wanted to show you a couple of things. If you look at this cow at the beginning, that's a cow we purchased at the sale barn, thin, body condition score probably 3. After a short time period of feeding, she picked up quite a bit of weight. We can still see some ribs there. She may only be a 4, 4.5. But this is a much more desirable condition to the Cull cow packer. This cow has all of her muscle, but not a lot of fat. Cow at the top has lost all her fat and a lot of her muscle as well. So he did a little study, called it Flip This Cow. And all he was doing was taking, and you know, when you sell a used vehicle, you clean it up a little bit. Use that same concept with trading in cull cows. If you clean them up just a little bit, they have a lot more value. So in this particular study, we actually did it twice. He took some cows in the summertime and we brought them in. They weighed 985. They were about a condition score 3. They went out weighing 1229 and a condition score of 5.3. So they picked up 2 condition scores in 93 days and 244 pounds, gained 2.6 pounds a day, which is actually low compared to what a lot of the data will show. We also took some cows in the fall and did the same thing. They weighed 951, came in at body condition score 2.7, went out at 1147. We picked up again about 2 body condition scores in 84 days this time. Not quite as much weight gain on those cattle through the winter time, but still very desirable. Now, if you take that a step further and say, well, did they make any money on this? The value in, you can see the cows in the summertime came in at about $600, whereas those bought in the fall came in at about $460. Those in the summer were worth more when we bought them, fed them through the summer than those in the fall. The out value was very similar for both of them, and the out dollars per pound was very similar. So we upgraded the fall cattle from 49 cents to 63 cents, and the summer cattle were flat, even though we improved them. The market didn't go up. So our cost of gains were very competitive, down around 50 cents. Total feed cost was around $100 for either group, but profit was way better in the fall. And that profit driver was predominantly buying them in a low market and selling them in a high market. That's where the majority of the money on these cull cows is. Whether you feed them or not, it's getting them into a better market. Now, there are times where we can get them into a better market and have a better cow to where instead of this being about a 15-cent swing or 14-cent swing, it can be over 20 cents. And that's a very big net gain on the cull cow side. What about age? This is some neat work out of New Mexico where they looked at taking really old cows and medium-aged cows and young cows and putting them on feed. And what they found was that these really old cows, anything over 7, lost a lot of weight in the first 14 days on feed. Then they turned around and picked up weight, but that first 14 days, they didn't do very much. So that overall, what you see is cows that are young, 3 and 4 year olds, that you've made the determination to cull these 3 and 4 year olds or 5 and 6 year olds for whatever reason. Those are cows that have a lot more weight gain potential than a 9 year old cow, for instance, in this particular study. These would have predominantly been probably British cows, or maybe British with a small amount of ear in New Mexico. Some more work here at the University of Florida. If you are going to feed cows, one of the things I would tell you is to capitalize on those cows in terms of their carcass quality. They probably ought to go direct to the packer. In this particular study, they fed cows for 42 days or 84 days. The average daily gain wasn't very good for this short time period. It was better on 84 days. But again, these cows weren't real skinny coming in. Some cows that were not on feed were around a condition score 5. The cows that work really well in these scenarios are around a condition score 3 and healthy. So our cost of gains in this study weren't very desirable. Our rate of gain wasn't very desirable, but we did succeed at putting more muscle in these cattle. They had a bigger ribeye area, and we turned the fat whiter. That has value if you're going to sell direct to the packer, because you get them into a better grade, more muscle, better dressing percentage, better fat color, but you're only going to get the value out of that if you sell directly to the packer. Can you flip them directly on hay and supplement? A lot of people say, well, I don't have the option to feed them full feed. Could I use hay and some supplement to do this? This is some old work Dr. Brown did at ONA in the 80s. And what I did was update it with some more modern prices. But they looked at feeding just hay. Those cows eating just hay ate 35 pounds of hay a day. No supplement. They gained about a pound a day. So over 114 days, they gained 114 pounds. That cost $173 based upon today's projections, and the cost to gain was very high. When you added some supplement like molasses or citrus pulp to it, it improved average daily gain, improved weight gain. It increased cost, but it dropped our cost of gain down. The problem is we need roughly a $10 gain in cow value just to break even. So if you're going to feed cows, hay or even hay and supplement is probably not the way to go unless you are in the hay business and you have a tremendous amount of pretty good quality hay that you don't have a market for right now. And you know, there's options there, particularly if you have the ability to grind it and feed it and put it in a total mixed ration. So if you're going to flip cows, I personally believe it requires cheap forage that you don't have any other use for. You know, you can do it on grass, but this needs to be grass that you can't use anywhere else. You got more grass than you know what to do with. You still need probably some supplement. This is going to, on grass, it's going to take a longer duration of time. If you put them on full feed and you have a cheap, dependable feed stuff, like we use brewer's grains in the Flip This Cow study, that feed stuff will work very well, but it needs to be really cheap. And then they can go on full feed and they have pretty good weight gains. Some guys will weigh these cows 28 days after they've been there. And those that are not picking up weight in 28 days, they go ahead and move those back to the market and keep those that are performing. You know, if you mouth those cows, what you probably find is it's younger cows probably picking up the majority of that weight. Keep in mind, there are some pitfalls to feeding cull cows. Disease, underlying issues that are not visible. She could have yonis. There could be toxic plant issues to where kidneys or liver are affected. She could have a parasite load. Those really old cows are sometimes fairly non-responsive. There can be a lot of death loss, as much as 10% or more in these old cows. And when you're blending cows, they have to reestablish social structure. So if this is cows and you're culling them out of 10 herds on a large ranch and throwing them all together, they have to reestablish social structure. And a lot of those cows are going to end up on the bottom of the totem pole and are not going to perform very well in a blended group. So if I was going to feed cull cows from that standpoint, I would do it for very short time periods. I would, 45 to 60 optimizes feed conversion and body weight gain. There's a lot of data out there that says those cows, when they're body condition score 3 and very healthy, will gain 4 to 5 pounds a day for about 45 days. Those thin younger cows will have better gain, and that cheapest weight gain occurs from a body condition score 2.5 to 4.5. That's mostly muscle gain. When you get above 4.5, it turns to fat gain. Open cows have fairly low maintenance requirements. If she's not pregnant and she's dry, you've weaned the calf off of her, it doesn't take a lot to meet her needs in terms of nutrition. Older cows may have more death loss. We talked about that. And the profit is highly dependent on upward shifts in the market. That's that playing that fall to spring window. It's highly tied to cheap feed or underutilized feed resources. And the one thing we haven't talked about is you ought to consider implanting those cull cows. If you have them up on feed, I would probably implant those cows with a TBA implant like they would in a feedlot. If you're going to capitalize and you're going to feed them and you're going to turn them into from a body condition score 3 to a 5 cow, that's the kind of cows that you need to sell probably directly to the packer to get the best outcome on them and get your money back. Now, one of the problems we're dealing with, and I just checked corn this morning, the uptick in feed prices is probably not going to make feeding cows from last fall into this year or even this summer very desirable. The next 3 market contracts for corn are all above $5. We don't drop below $5 until you get out to about September this year. So our feed prices are probably high enough that it's going to make it very difficult to feed these cows. Central beef reopening may have an uptick in terms of demand for our Florida cows. I can't see how it wouldn't. And there may be more demand for fed cows. I know before they closed, they were purchasing a lot of fed cows out in the country to meet their needs of higher valued products. I'm going to skip to a couple of slides. I'm going to go through this cow example here real quick. She's a 3-year-old cow. We preg checked her in the fall and found out she's open. She raised a good calf. She's just thin, weighs 1,000 pounds. Right now, or last fall, she was worth 57 cents. That was $570 on a heifer you got 1 calf out of. That's going to represent a pretty significant loss to you. If you put her on good groceries, she can gain 3 pounds a day in 60 days. That's 180 pounds of weight gain, at least 1 condition score. She weighs 1180. In February, she may now be worth 75 cents a pound and $8.85. That's $315 a head divided by 180 pounds. That's $1.75 for every pound of gain. Now you got to know what it cost you to put that gain on, but that's pretty significant. Even if we don't keep her for the gain standpoint, a 3-year-old open cow is going to be a cow I'm going to keep. I'm going to keep that cow, but I'm going to put her on probation. She may even go to my terminal herd. She's taking her 1 skip right now. Here's a 6-year-old cow. She's open, never missed, raised a good calf. Body condition score 4. She's got a good mouth with no defects. That's a cow I'm going to keep because she's still at the prime. 6-year-old, 4 to 8-year-old cows are the prime of your herd, but she's on probation. A 13-year-old open cow, never missed, raised an acceptable calf, missing 2 teeth, no defects. She's a broke mouth cow. I'm probably going to go ahead and call her. By the time I get a calf out of her again, she's going to be 15. And between 13 and 15, those cows can really go downhill. A 14-year-old cow, she's bred, Missed once as a 4-year-old, always raises a good calf. She's in good condition. She's got an okay mouth. She's going to be a cow I'm going to keep, but she's on probation. I'm going to watch her closely. She's a cow that may raise me a good calf this year or last year, but may not do it again this year. And then she's going to go to the cull list. 16-year-old cow that's bred, missed once as an 8-year-old, raised a below average calf this year. She's really thin. She's got a broken mouth and she's got arthritis. Even though she's bred, that's a cow that probably needs to be culled. I have found that keeping these last calf heifers has bitten me more often than not whenever I look at them and evaluate what kind of calf they did raise. At some point, they're going to head downhill, and we had to make that decision. It's time for her to go. If you're going to make any of these decisions, good record keeping is essential. And I'm going to wrap this up real quick. That either means you have to have your cows identified individually. You have to have a history on her. Lots of us don't have that. I like the idea that she carries that history on her. So when she comes open, she gets an earmark. When she has calving difficulty or a problem, she gets an earmark. When she raises kind of a marginal calf, she gets an earmark or brand. And it doesn't have to be a big brand. It can be a little tiny X put right back by her tailhead. She's got that history with her. You can use computer software. You can do all kinds of electronic ID. You can do all of that. But if you will cull these cows in a good system, and if you'll put into place a probation group, it will simplify your management. It will improve your cow herd productivity. It will improve your fertility, because only cows that reproduce year in and year out again and again stay in my prime herd. Everybody that goes on probation goes in a different herd and doesn't get a chance to leave genetics in the herd. Over time, you're going to find the cattle that will work best for your operation. Now, I want to close this out by talking about the packer end of cull cows. Keep in mind that not all cull cows go to McDonald's or Burger King. Lots of cull cow meats are pulled. A lot of the hindquarter would be Arby's roast beef. All these middle meats here at the top, that's going to go somewhere to a low-end steakhouse. It's going to go to a value steakhouse, and they're going to pull ribeyes and loins and tenderloins out and sell them as whole muscle cuts. So not all cows are ground. Not all packing plants are the same. Some specialize in pulling out whole muscle cuts. They'll pull the ribeye. They'll pull out cuts from the chuck. They may pull briskets. And some only make lean. Some cow plants really only make lean. As a rule of thumb, a cow that's a body condition score 4 has the most value to the cull cow packer. Maybe 4.5, because she has all of her muscle, but not a lot of fat. And that's what they really are looking for in these cull cows. 100% of plants surveyed in the non-fed quality audit were pulling out ribs and loins. Lots of them were pulling out rounds, flanks, tenderloins, chucks, even briskets. And those are being sold as whole muscle cuts. I know Hitchcock's here in town sells cow tenderloins for $5.88. It's a very affordable, low-priced alternative for a lot of people. Keep in mind that these cows, some cows don't need to be culled. If she's really got a problem and she's got a disease issue, she's crippled, she can't walk, she's got a bad eye, all of those are cows that probably ought to be euthanized at home. And the rule of thumb on that is look at her, take a quick look at her, and follow this rule. If you wouldn't want your kids or grandkids to eat it, don't sell it. It's just that simple. If you look at that cow and say, well, we ought to get her gone before she goes down anymore, ask yourself, would you eat product from that cow? If the answer is no, she needs to be euthanized at home. So from a culling standpoint, the decisions become fairly easy to me. If she has no teeth, she's a cull. Down at the bottom, if she has a disposition issue, she's a cull. If she's open her second time, she's a cull. Those 3 are culls, but they don't have to be sold right away. Feet and leg issues, eye issues, disease, very thin, unthrifty, those are culls and probably need to go right away and probably need to go direct to the packer instead of going through the sale barn where they can be seen by the public eye. If you look at older cows over 12 years of age, put them on probation. She's pregnant this year, she stays. Open first time, probation. Missing a tooth, probation. Got not the most perfect udder, probation. Raised a marginal calf, probation. Difficult calving, probation. I'm not going to cull these cows over here just because they're going to be on a case-by-case basis, and on probation, they're going to be watched a lot closer. You can sell those probation cows when that market is elevated. Anytime it goes up, you've got a whole batch of cows that can go. When you face drought and you run out of feed, the first cows to go are my probation cows. They're the ones that need to move. You can sell them to somebody that wants them worse than you. Put them right up front. And somebody comes by, put a sign out there, cows for sale. There'll be somebody that's interested in those cows and wants to pay you more for them than they may be worth. And they're also the cows that when you need money, they're the first to go. When we're short on cash for feed or other resources that we need to take care of, those are going to be the cows that need to go. So if you put them into a cull and probation category, manage those probation cows separately, I think there's much greater opportunity down the road to simplify your management on these cull cows. With that, I'm going to close it up and finish by opening and say, they're a cull for a reason. They've got a hole in them. They've got a problem with them. They don't all have to be sold right away. When you sell them, depends highly on your individual operation. But getting her from a fall into a spring time frame is almost always a win-win from a financial standpoint. With that, I will open it back up to questions anybody might have. I think we're still pseudo within our time window, and any questions that we might have, we'll go from there.
Regarding udders, when do you cull? When 2 or more teats are affected, or do you just put her on probation when she has one bad udder, one bad teat?
I think I would do case by case. 2 certainly puts her on probation. Usually if she's got 1, she's got 2. It's been my experience. And usually it's front quarters. They get blown out. One of the things I have observed, and with this observation occurs mostly with Brahman cattle. The big issue with bad teats is when that calf is newborn and he can't get around to them because they're too low or too big. Too low is probably a bigger issue. I have seen calves get around teats that were way bigger than this can of Dr. Pepper. Way bigger. If they were high. And so udder suspension is probably as big an issue as teat size. Sometimes she'll get around to the 2 back ones because they point out. And if they can get, or the 2 front ones because they point out. And so it's a multifaceted thing. And there's nothing to do but watch them. If I brought them up, and I've asked this question of the dairy guys, and I don't really have a good hard answer yet. But if this calf nurses 3 quarters, and one of those quarters is really big, the 4th one's really big, and the teat's large, what we find happens if she dries that one off, what we find happens is that the other 3 pick up the slack, and she makes about as much milk, and she raises about as big a calf. Now, what I would do is put her in the probation herd and not allow her to pass that bad udder genetics on. I think that's kind of a no-brainer. So you put her in there and she gets a Charolais calf. The other thing you can do, and this applies more to people with purebreds, but let's say I have a purebred Angus cow and she's got bad udder, or purebred Hereford cow and got a bad udder. Instead of making her purebred, if you made her crossbred, that crossbred calf will be a lot more vigorous at nursing, and he'll a lot of times get around that bad udder. So this is a multifaceted question because it really depends. If it's a bad udder and purebred Brahman, and it's cold, wet weather, then the calf doesn't have a prayer when you add Brahman influence to the mix. So I think it really depends on what your tolerance it is to this. If you don't have good facilities and a good chute and a way to get her up and milk her out, then when she's got one bit bad teat, she needs to go in the probation herd. But when you evaluate that, it's very difficult. That needs to be evaluated at birth when she has the calf. You look at her 3 months later and you say, well, that one teat's bigger than the rest, or the two front teats are bigger. That doesn't really mean anything. I got some calves that will nurse a cow with big teats. She got 4 big teats. Once I get the calf started, they're fine, totally fine. We'll get around to all those large teats without too much trouble. And by the time she weans a calf, you would have never known she had big teats, but she does have a low udder. And so I think it's a combination of looking at all those things. The simplest way is to say, you know what, that teat is bad this year. It will never get better. And so put her in the probation herd.
Okay, great, awesome. All right, so we have a few more questions coming
Okay.
in. Actually, there's like 4 more questions. Says, I'm a new producer and I haven't sold to a packer. Where is one around the Bradford area that does culls?
Okay. So are you talking about, I don't know where that area is. Is that North Florida, South Florida? Where's that at? But let's just assume so. So in Florida, we have
Northeast.
Northeast. All right. So you don't have one is the short answer. There might be some small packers in that area that would take her, but selling to the packer either means you're close to the packer in Zolfo, Florida beef, or Central beef, which is in Center Hill, Florida. You could haul them all the way from Northeast down to Center Hill if they were opening, but I wouldn't do that unless I had a trailer load of them. If you have one, the livestock market is by far your best outlet. You will spend more on diesel or gas to get one head there. Now, if you're going to the packer and you have a whole gooseneck load or a semi load, then it becomes a different scenario. Most of our cull cows in Florida will be harvested by Florida beef at Zolfo, Center Hill, harvest some. A large percentage of them go to Brown Pack in South Carolina or FPL in Augusta, Georgia, which means, you know, you're not going to drive to Augusta, Georgia with 2 cows on your gooseneck trailer, or even Brown Pack in South Carolina. So you're better off just going to the sale barn for most small producers. If you're big and you have a semi load of them to sell, you can call those big packers and they will bid them on your ranch. They'll send a truck to get them and give you a price if you're large enough to do that. But that represents a very small percentage of our producers that are out there.
Okay. All right, next question. Is there any benefit of giving an implant if flipping a cull cow?
Yeah. And so it depends on how long you're going to flip her. Implants, I would use a TBA implant, and you need to read the label on that, but it says for cattle in confinement. Confinement is your key word there. But if you're feeding them in a dry lot kind of a situation, that will work. I would use TBA like Revelor, Cenevex Plus, Component. Those implants give you more bang for the buck because they reduce protein turnover. And so the animal's not burning a lot of energy turning over protein. You can use implants like Ralgro, but they don't give you near as much gain response as a TBA implant would. The key to this is how long you're going to have her. the payout on many of those is 60, probably closer to 90 days on the TBA implants like Revelor. So if you're going to keep her that long, and if you're going to keep her from the fall into the spring, I would probably implant those cows. Now, that's if you're going to sell them to the packer, okay? If you're wanting to resell them as cows that someone may breed at, then don't implant them. Does that make sense to everybody? I hope. So it depends on what you're doing there. If you're interested in weight gain and you're going direct to the packer, yes, implant them. If you've got them more than 60 days, I'd tell you to implant them. If you're flipping them quick, 30 days, probably not. Or if you're flipping them from a low fall market to a high spring market, then and going to sell them with the option to go back to the country, don't implant them.
Okay. Next question. What do you think about not culling as many open cows in years when the calf price is high, like in 2014, 2015, and selling heifer calves for the monetary or cash flow?
Absolutely 100% agree with that. You ought to let your herd size fluctuate if you have that ability. And your herd age, I guess I should say as well. So in times when calf prices are really high, those heifers, someone else probably needs to own them. For instance, as we move 2 years down the road, maybe as our calf prices increase here in the future, I'm going to move to keep way fewer heifers and let someone else have them. When they get up around $800-900, they can own them. They can have the heifers, and I'm going to maintain a cow longer. I'm going to squeeze another calf out of her if I can. But you have to be careful. There are cows, remember my red label cows that are culls. Don't try to squeeze a calf out of her if she's got cancer eye, if she's arthritic. Okay? I would probably keep an open 10-year-old cow or 12-year-old cow and try to breed at her, because she's going to be worth $500 and the heifer I'm going to replace her with may be worth $1,000. And so I certainly would do that on a regular basis. And I think that's a good long-term financial strategy. It has short-term problems from a cash flow standpoint, because what will happen then is the market turns down, you will have a lot of old cows that you will need to replace, and that replacement rate may go from 15 to 30%. And then your heifers, you say, well, now those heifers are only worth $600. I'm going to keep them all. That's fine. Keep them all. But if you keep all your heifers, you've cut your income tremendously. Now, you've replaced it with more cull cows you're selling, but a lot of times they're in a down price as well. Not always, but a lot of times. So what you'll see when you do that is more total dollars at the end of a 10-year cycle by a lot, but lots of flow in terms of my available cash. And lots of people are not able to do that. But I absolutely would allow someone else to own those heifers when the market's really high, like in 14. And when the market's really low, like it was maybe last year and the year before, I keep them all. Keep all the heifers and get your herd younged up, drop the age a little.
Okay, good deal. All right, so next question. Should a calf be weaned early because the mama is losing a lot of body condition score?
I think that depends on timing. I don't have any problem with early weaning calves, but it's highly dependent on timing. If it's a 2-year-old or a 3-year-old with a first or second calf on her, it may be a good mediation, what I call disaster mediation. The big question is, why is she losing weight? If she's 14 years old and she's having that calf and she's really losing weight and she's really going downhill, yeah, it might be time. Some of that is that's really an economic decision. If she's going downhill and losing weight, then maybe it's time to market her. As well, what's the market for that calf? Right now, those really lightweight calves don't have a ton of value. Well, they may be worth $150, $200. They don't. I think you could do that, and maybe some of these older cows in a probation herd, you're going to have to do that too. The one thing you can do to change that cow's energy requirements and turn her from a declining condition to an increasing condition is stop the flow of milk. You stop the flow of milk, and she's going to pick up. So it's a case by case and really an economic decision, not a cookbook decision. How much can I get for the calf? Do I plan to sell the cow? Is it a drought situation? All of those things have to factor in. If you cut the flow of milk, she will pick up condition. If she does not pick up condition, she has something else wrong. Disease, more than likely, or toxic plant.
Okay. All right. That was the last question, Dr. Thrift. Okay, great. All right. So everybody that's still with us, thank you for staying on. I hope you enjoyed today's presentation with Dr. Thrift. We really enjoyed having you. You guys are welcome to join us again in March for Dr. Vendramini's own highlight. He is going to be talking about his owner report that's going to be in the Florida Cattleman's Journal in March, the use of sun hemp as a cover crop and forage in Florida. And then in April, on the 13th, the South Florida Beef Forage Program is going to be joining us, talking about all the different things that they are doing, programs they have coming up, and resources and how to use them. More information on that next month. Don't forget, we have our Bluebird Watcher Seminary series going all this year until June. And the next one is going to be February the 27th. It's on a Saturday, and it's at 1 o'clock, and it's virtual. You can register at any time, so please check that out. And then the South Florida Beef Forage Program is offering their reproductive management school, the Alvin C. Warnick Beef Cattle Reproductive Management online video series through their website. And so take a photo of that, of their page if you don't know where that is, or you can Google it, South Florida Beef Forage Program. And through their publications link, you can access all of these videos free of charge, anytime, anybody can watch. So check that out. And if you're not already following us, this is the information for where you can find upcoming events, things that are going to be happening or are happening. Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. Check out our website, visit the calendar for links to these events, and see what else is coming up. And so that is all that I have for today. So thank you everybody for joining us. I hope you have a great rest of the day, and thank you again, Dr. Thrift.